Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I am your host, Rico Muhammad, and we are going to be joined here shortly by Hank Seaton again. Remember, we were having technical difficulties about 2 weeks back when we had Hank on, and so he was gracious enough to come back and join us again, and we're going to pick back up on some of that discussion that we had the last time we had on with the fraud situation and also a couple of other things. So we have our resident legal transportation expert on with us this week. But before any further ado, a little bit of housekeeping. If you guys would do us a huge favor, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. That helps us get out to a broader algorithm. And as well, if you know someone that may benefit from this information that we're sharing with you guys tonight, by all means, point them in the direction of the show. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and welcome in my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. There we go. There we go. Hey, Chuck.
Lots going on. You know what? It's this fraud thing isn't going away, and we just scratched the surface a couple weeks ago when Hank joined us. And I think your idea is good to bring him back. First of all, to finish what we started talking about, and really see if Hank can go in a little bit deeper. This fraud is serious, with everybody on, throughout the industry. It's just I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Yeah, and it was kind of a good follow up to as well from the last week's show when we had Tommy Rook on with the situation that they offer with the service that he's offering with the help out with watching out for your own identity being stolen. So without any further ado, let's welcome our resident legal expert, Mr. Hank Seaton, on board with us. Good afternoon. Well, it's evening time. Good evening, Hank.
Yeah, I'm interested. You said you had my friend Tommy on last week. What was he proposing as a solution?
Well, he's got a service that he's putting together to help vet, to help carriers, and so they can vet themselves so that they know if anybody is using their identity. That's what he's working on.
Oh, okay. It doesn't really surprise me. There are, let's say, there are a number of standalones. The TIA is endorsing one called Highway. There's a gal in Atlanta that's got a methodology. A lot of people are to the point that I think they feel like getting the agency to improve its posture in terms of vetting people isn't going to happen anytime soon. So that's something that we can discuss tonight. I think probably the most important things to talk about is what's upcoming. The agency is proposing to start a new application for new entrants, and it really is not going to have any direct tie-in to enforcement, but it is a 25-page fill-in-the-blank questionnaire that is going to replace 6 other applications. They have applications now for things like change of name, change of location, which are really short forms. And frankly, it's really pretty easy to figure out what you need there to do it. But they're merging all of these into this 35-page questionnaire, and you will go back to that, I guess, to try to hunt and peck for whatever change you want. But the key to it is it's all going into an artificial intelligence macro database that they say will somehow affect fraud. That aspect is yet to really be determined because if there's no enforcement, the real question becomes identifying The crooks is no problem. We can really identify them if they would simply look at using their hotline. I mean, people don't even report what's going on out there because there's no enforcement. I think
Right.
the first thing is if we just shared with them the amount of fraud that we can capture, and it would be very educational to congressmen and everybody else. Because as you mentioned, Chuck, the extent of the fraud is just rampant. And it hits big people, it hits little people, it affects big shippers, little shippers, uh, particularly brokers. It spawned a whole injury of bill collectors who survive by trying to ruin the reputation of good brokers who get caught up in the scam. And, we could spend the hour of the time we have together talking about that. But this application has a filing date of the 27th, and it's not what they call rulemaking. I don't want to get geeky about being a lawyer over this, but rulemaking is the process here in the States when you want to make a substantive change in something and it's going to affect stakeholders to any material degree. The agency has to lay out what the rule is. It has to go through a bunch of tests. What's its effect on due process? What is the cost benefit analysis? Is there some way to do it that's better? There are all kinds of provisions in these acts that goes with it that says they got to pay special attention to the effect of any new regulation on a small business. So it's that level of scrutiny that we suggest this new application needs to have. And the agency disagrees with that. They want to say, well, it's all we're doing is rearranging deck chairs. But if arranging deck chairs means that they're going to take down MC numbers, give every active carrier, broker, and freight forwarder a US DOT number, they're going to automatically be messing with over 700,000 carriers. And then when you get your new DOT number, the issue is going to be how does that identify you in terms of the service you're providing?
Right.
Chuck, I would think from your point of view, if you've got your carrier and broker authority in the same or similar name, you may very well have one MC number. Well, as currently provided, that MC number would go away and it would be a DOT number, which could mean that you are exempt, regulated, or for hire, and or a broker. So I think that the confusion about what hat you're wearing is even made more difficult by the proposal. So in that response, we initially suggested to them that it was premature to go into this until they had offered more specificity, particularly with the effect of what positive effect is it going to have on fraud, what's it going to cost small folks, and how is there a tie-in between this application and prosecuting fraud. And we suggested that since they have got in their pipeline two petitions, one is to examine a program to actually vet brokers prior to issuance of the new application, and another one to actually vet carriers. We think that they've got the cart before the horse to be dedicating a new system that wouldn't accomplish that. And as I talk with Chuck, that's really the heart of what I think ought to be done now, which is it's time for the agency, since they've only been working on this for 25 years, to take a breath and say, we're not going to do it piecemeal. And we're going to look at the application we put out, whatever it is, being one that can be conducted for both safety and fraud, and completed on a new entrant during that 25-day protest period. So the proposal that is, whether it's made on the 27th or later, really should be, we think, that a new guy, let's say he's an owner operator, let's say he's had 20 years of road experience, and because of AB5 and the rest of the mess down here, needs to get his own authority, should have a fair shot at competition. And that the only way he'll get that fair shot is if the agency at least gives him a new carrier audit, so that shippers aren't afraid to use them because of plaintiff's bar and negligent selection. Insurance companies aren't required to rate him high because they don't have any way to measure him. And, at that point, if we are going to lose the owner-operator model, the little guy will have a fighting chance to stay in business. The other thing that we're going to suggest and lay out on the table sooner or later is that, as my friend Rick Gobble says, it ought to be safety, compliance, and common sense.
Well, yeah.
And common sense says that if you're in any trade or profession that requires testing, you're tested and proven to be safe and fit before you start operating.
Well,
Use the analogy. I graduated from law school, but that didn't say they gave me the shingle. I had to pass the bar review. And you look at it from this way. All of these guys who I think are part of that 100,000 that are coming over, had enough sense to take and pass the CDL, so they're fit to drive. But for some reason, we can't similarly come up with a simple uniform test to be sure that they understand what the rules are, the rules of the road, the constructive trust for a property broker, what you have to maintain, how you operate, have been around for 40 years. They just have lost their stinger because the agency doesn't enforce it. So that's kind of, I guess, the 5,000-foot issue of what's kind of coming up between now and the election. The other things that a longer presentation would get into is, well, the fraud issue is everybody's hot topic, but for the fraud issue to be addressed down here, you're going to have our Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Justice Department will have to be involved if it's going to result in any jail time. And that's just the way we work. When you prosecute someone, they've got to have due process, and all the time, Department of Justice is working with other departments of the federal government to prosecute cases. But at this point in time, the FMCSA says, "Oh no, that's cumbersome. We can't really do it." Well, if that's the fact, there's no way currently for anybody to go out and get the guy who's not a registered carrier. The guy's just an identity theft. He sold somebody's identity theft. He's walked off with $1 million, and there's nobody.
Yeah, nobody
out here identified.
One of the things that I want to just bring up is, ever since I've been in the business, which is 50 years next month, and way before that, there's been exempt commodities such as things that come out of the ground, fruits and vegetables, things like that, that are come out of North American soil. And I would think, given that we've evolved, that was made exempt because many years ago, Hank and Rico, you're not as aware as the how we used to have to file for authority for commodities and name shippers and all sorts of things. It was a different era. It was almost, it was coming out of the horse and buggy era into the truck with square tires made of wood era. And we pinned fruits and vegetables to be exempt commodities, but there's a lot of fraud going on in that sector with, fictitious brokers brokering loads of that. And there doesn't seem to be anybody can do anything on that because it's an exempt commodity, correct?
You would think so. What's going on behind the Iron Curtain, I don't really know, but I was around in that day, and I know why the exemptions are here. The exemptions were here because roots, rates, and services were covered, and the farmer who had a truck that he needed for planting season wanted to get into the business and haul produce, and they knew there was no way he could afford the application process. So just as a political issue, they made a carve out from having to file for a certificate of public convenience and necessity if you were hauling ag product. And there are all kinds of other exceptions that were passed over to the FMCSA when we deregulated roots, rates, and services. Now, the question you ask, which is a great one, when we give everybody a ding to sell, if it's a fraud, if it's pickles that have been processed, but it's not a fraud if the same guy is stealing the cucumbers.
Yes.
I mean, the distinction just makes no difference. And one of the questions that we have been asking them, and because they haven't firmed this up as a rule, anybody can read, we don't have an answer. Okay, you're going to give everybody a DOT number. And that includes exempt people, that includes private people, that includes expediters who are operating a van or a sprinter. So which of these people are you concerned about monitoring for purposes of fraud? It would seem to me that the obvious answer is, well, anybody who is arranging for transportation.
Right. But, you could.
Regardless of the size of the equipment or the nature of the commodity. The interesting issue is the broker regulations don't have the long history we do with the other. And when they came out with the broker regulations, they only did certain carve-outs and didn't even mention whether it applied to produce or anything else. They just said you were not a broker if you were in the ordinary course of business a customs broker. Okay, they carved out certain exceptions, but they never addressed the issue of whether the broker's bond even applied to exempt products. So it didn't make any mention about a property broker being involved in exempt product. Now, Chuck, you understand that it's a little bit different with produce in that usually the broker has title to the goods. So usually the guy has bought the raw product, I think, and is a produce broker.
Right, that's different. A produce broker is certainly a lot different than a truck or a freight broker. A produce broker is fine taking title. I'm not even.
If they have title to the product, it doesn't just fit in the real clean and narrow with the property broker. But as far as I'm concerned, if a guy is acting as a broker in a relationship, it shouldn't matter for purposes of the broker's bond, whether it's an expensive load of strawberries or whether it's bicycles.
Yeah.
Both on the call board, the role of the intermediary is absolutely the same. The chance of larceny by fraud is the same. So, that is a very major issue when you start looking.
It's
Is exempt.
And there were some other carve outs. Now I don't know if that still stands. At one time, printed material that had a date on it was exempt. Is that still the case?
Not that I'm aware of. There used to be a newspaper exemption. Now, whether it extended to things that had, there is no provision that I have seen. I do know that newspapers were oftentimes considered to be exempt. And, since they have a short shelf life, stealing them doesn't seem to be a big issue, I guess. But there are other little nitty exemptions that are legacies of when it was a political issue. Back when we had roots rates in service, you'd have to put on a 10-day hearing and not prove that you were going to do it cheaper, just prove that the other guy was so bad you needed an extra sermon. So,
well, we could do a whole hour on that alone on the old days. But and what we're left with now is we still have some stuff hanging on there from the old days that has to be cleaned up. I think this produce exemption, personally, is crazy. It's got to get cleaned up, and it's got to be, a load of blueberries or a load of computers, doesn't matter.
Well, and I think everybody would basically agree with you. Now, and you can chime in on this, because you found that even though handling produce in terms of claims resolution and those things is completely different than Carmack, that both the carriers and the shippers seem to like the fresh fruit and vegetable reconciliation program, the blue book and the red book, for resolving the claims and going on down the road better than they did what we call the Carmack amendment. It's the lawyers involved. I don't think there would be anything that would keep the produce industry from agreeing to continue to arbitrate these things under whatever level they wanted to. But I do think it's unfair that you got a $75,000 bond fraud, and it doesn't apply to all commodities.
Yeah, and you know what? First of all, the $75,000 bond is a joke, because we've seen a number of cases where, from the carrier end years ago, I remember taking some work from a entertainment venue. It was a third-party entertainment broker, very well respected, and they owed us a lot of money, and we went after the bond with your office's help, and we got some of our money, but it was I think it was a $75,000 or $100,000 bond. We got some of our money, but it was, these people went down for millions of dollars. That meant that other people didn't get much, because we were to get it first because your office was so quick on it. So even when you get a $500,000 bond, in the case of somebody like a Convoy that went under, that doesn't go very far, even a $500,000 bond.
Well, yeah, and the interesting thing that's a tag along for that, the FMCSA has got another rulemaking running underground. If a broker's file claims get to the 75,000 mark, that the broker must replenish the source to keep 75 if it's going to take the factor or the bondsman 6 months to look it up. And, when you look at that, they think that's going to be a perfect fit, but it really isn't, because I think, as we all know, there's retaliation, and a lot of times there are bonds that may very well be bogus. I look at it, the first thing that will happen will be that the bill collectors will file spurious claims against brokers when they extended credit to some crook and claim they've got recourse. And how quicker to muscle money out of you than to file a claim against you as a broker for $100,000, and you've got one or two choices: go replenish your bond in 15 days, remove it. See, so I mean, it's itself on the road. I think that the real issue is not where the bond is, but when you are a broker, you've got an obligation to keep constructive trust, which
Right.
means if you get paid by the shipper, show me the money. If you can't show me the money, it's called embezzlement.
Right.
And when you get that, there'll be some very large brokers that would say, no, we get better service. We're too big to fail. That's not true.
No,
But,
nobody is.
I can't say as a lawyer, I've got constructive trust responsibility as a lawyer. I can't say, oops, I made a mistake. I bought my wife a new car and now I can't pay my client the money I collected. Right. So, I mean, I think this is just really common sense. But
well, yeah, because it's not brokers, and I've dealt with a number of deals in the past number of years where the banks have gotten smart now, thank God, and some of the financial institutions, and when they're looking at at somebody's an application, and they're saying, well, this broker does he does $1 million a month, and he's got this much money in the bank. They're saying that's great, he's got that much money in the bank. Now, how much are his receivables? How much are his payables? Well, it's okay. His receivables are $1 million, and his payables are 975. Well, now the bank is saying, okay, that means he's got $25,000 in equity. That's it.
I never took an accounting course, but I know that much.
Well, but
that when an accounting course says that, but the ultimate issue is the way it was set up. If unless the contract otherwise being pay, ultimately the customer, if he goes bankrupt, the broker is not on the hook for it. That thing is it's a bit naughty, but now that more and more people who are wearing the hat of both the broker and the carrier, I think there's more understanding that easiest way is constructive trust. And there are some large brokers who won't even do away with that.
Yeah.
And of course, if that happens, a little guy who wants to, serve a hometown shipper and do $1 million in business a year is not going to have any ability to compete.
So,
Yeah,
Hank, shifting gears just a little bit, I'm hearing a lot of stuff about the government is supposed to be coming down about lease agreements and things of that nature. Supposed to be given some type of a different ruling or something. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I figured if anybody know anything about it, you would.
Yeah, that's one of the three issues that I'm going to be covering on Tuesday. The labor movement that is so zealous in the administration has asked for a favor, and that favor is to kill the owner-operator model. And it's not just that they're after the owner-operator model. If you listen to them, they say that the only way for the middle class to survive in America is for everybody to work 9 to 5 and get paid for overtime, and that DOL says that they ought to change the labor laws and the control test so that it's impossible for anybody to pass it. Now, that's basically what happened with AB 5.
Right.
They just changed the law and made it impossible under state law for people out there to be independent contractors. And that issue, AB 5, isn't really resolved yet, simply because the feds have got competing findings by states, and they haven't ruled on. In the meantime, California's endorsing it. Illinois is not far behind. New York and New Jersey have got the same political view. So everybody that I know who's got owner operators is saying, "What the heck do we do?" And a lot of the big guys, particularly in California, are just telling their people, "We're sorry, we're ending the owner operator model out here. If you want to move to Nevada, give us a call." Otherwise, there are various levels of risk that you bear. But the difficult issue is the Department of Labor has been sandbagged with union representatives from California. So now the Department of Labor, if ever asked to rule, is going to bend over backwards to say that unionization should be adopted. And that applies not only to the control test, it also applies, we have exemption from the hour service for trucks. Truck driver needs to get time and a half after 40. It also goes to the argument that they have loaded up a special advisory committee. It's full of pro-union people, and its purpose is to look at the lease-to-own records, because for 40 years we've had these truth in leasing regulations. And
Right.
the truth in leasing regulations protect the owner-operator by giving him access to federal court, for Pete's sakes. Or tries to money or doesn't pay him in 15 days. Oh, I'd love it. They'll go take the case. And frankly, I'll tell you, I have got zero sympathy for some motor carrier who's trying to make a profit over the back of the independent contractor.
I agree.
That is not to say that a major motor carrier who can go out and buy a new tractor 2 years and then give an operator the right to pick up the lease and babysit the old tractor isn't doing the owner operator a fair deal. He can't cheat him, but I mean, I have seen deals like that have worked very well, because if you are an owner operator, going out and financing a used truck is probably excellent. If they can have arrangement with an owner operator that gives them skin in the games, lets them pay for it over time, gives them portability, it's all so much easier for them to get reasonable financing. But I set in on, Chuck was there. You remember Chuck, the FMCSA was having that all-day panel room loaded up with those guys talking about it. Well, I got sick at my stomach listening to it. There must have been 40 people in the room, and maybe there was one person that had anything good to say about lease to own. And
well, I got to tell you, there's some horror stories, because what a lot of companies do is they'll take this new driver, or maybe even a seasoned driver that has no money, and rather than hiring that person as a employee, they got to tell you what, Rico or Chuck or Hank, lease the truck, And if you lease it for $3,000 a month, after 88 months, it's your truck, and we'll pay you starting day one as an owner operator. And these guys, well, that's great. Now I'm an owner operator, and sometimes they work, but I've heard a lot of horror stories, as you have, Hank.
Well, yeah, and I have too. Bad facts make bad law.
Yeah.
And all I can tell you is you guys know I'm not going to represent somebody on an owner operator if I don't see that they're being given an entrepreneurial opportunity. And I had to. It's been 20 years ago, but the guy who's currently president of OIDA and I were at a conference together, and I asked him about a lease to own deal for a really large company, and I said, "Well, now look, Todd, if this is track leased equipment, owner operator has the right to pay off the declining mortgage at any time and take the truck anytime, anywhere he wants. If we strictly adhere to the independent contractor model, and if we're looking to view your member as the pearl of great price, because it doesn't do us any good to have chase some guy for some money. What we're going to do is we're going to ultimately give him safety, insurance, and we're going to be his travel agent. What do you say about that?" And he said, "Well, we do have people that do it." And he says, we're not out to burn people who are honest and compliant. Now, I'm not sure that that's their current policy, because they've always kind of had a straddle the fence over it. But I was curious to see them participating on the side of the unions in terms of this position.
Talking about OIDA, it's owned by a union, is it not?
What, OIDA?
Yeah, it's owned by the Teamsters Union, is it not?
No.
Oh,
No, it's
okay.
not.
Okay, I'm wrong.
It's not. It's not. But Jim passed away. He was the guy that founded it. Todd Spencer's the president now. They've been around for 40 years. They've got the name Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association.
Right.
But at the same time, they have always been deferential in terms of, to get a seat at the table, they've got to share it with the union. But
okay, so that was the connection.
They're into some of the stuff that NASTIC is. They sell insurance. They provide other things. In the past, they've had some challenges because their insurance program had some kicks in it, and they would have to go out and find somebody to take on their insurance group. We did some of those things for them. So I think I have pretty fair relations with them. But as you guys can see, if you've been watching anything about our election, it's just over the top in terms of union support.
Yeah, no, I know that. But it's funny, the Teamsters went out and supported Donald Trump. That was an odd one, wasn't it?
I don't think that's through the exclusion. I saw that, but we got strange politics down here.
Oh yeah,
to say the least.
And I can't figure out. Today I was listening to the TV, and Kamala, whatever, made a statement, and I wrote it down. it was something to the effect that under her administration, uh, uh, everybody was going to be able to make have a job, and that they would be able to invest in a small business. And I thought to myself, well, tell that to about 300,000 owner operators how you're gonna help them invest in a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so when is because I'm hearing different things about they're supposed to be giving some type of rulemaking or something associated with this. When is this supposed to be coming down the pike?
It is not, well, the FMCSA, I think, was only commissioned to get a report out. There hadn't been any rule on it. Obviously, DOL, Department of Labor, went through the government channels to get this set up. And when it was proposed, there was you got nominated. You know, they wanted to have a diversity. Well, 3 or 4 people supported me, and you know, I thought, well, gee, I do a lot of this. I at least could give the opposite point of view that it works and makes a good reason. Uh, I wasn't selected. It came as no surprise. Nobody else I knew was, and you know, I didn't take it much a hand-picked group. Did you stick your head in it much, Chuck? Did you get a chance to confirm it? I sat down for about an hour. And,
yeah, I stuck my head in for a while, and that was it. Because you know what, the problem, my big thing is that's a great show. You know, they do a great job. The problem is they've got these wonderful lectures and stuff and things going on, but if you go to them, it uses up an entire day. You can't get anything else done there.
mm-hmm. You say it was a great show. What were you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the. Are you talking about at Matt's
presentation?
Yeah. Just in general, Matt's is a great show, but when you go to all
owner operator, yeah.
The problem is you're trying to get these lectures done and see the show in a couple of days because you don't want to be around there on Saturday because it's a zoo. So you only have Thursday and Friday to really see the show and listen to the lectures. It's just not enough time.
Well, I'm glad to say I've done it once. I don't think I'll be back. You see that you can see how that owner operator issue really does play out because there's so many niches in which the owner operator place just can't be placed, particularly in the dray industry.
Right.
That I would say that 90% of the dray operators, particularly at the East Coast and the West Coast, are owner operators, and of that 80%, I would say well over 50% of them are immigrants.
Yeah.
You know, they're people that legitimate people that came across the Rio Grande, and this is what they came for.
Yeah.
You look at the port of Northern California ports, and everybody up there is Sikh.
Yeah, you know what? It's the same as in you know, I don't know if they're Sikhs or what they are, but in Canada in general, a good portion of the trucking sector is made up of people from Southeast Asia. Now, some of them I've met are from Pakistan, other ones are from the Punjab region or other parts of India, Sri Lanka, and then some of the countries around the Persian Gulf as well. You know, it's a whole bunch of immigrants. Years ago it was people from Eastern Europe. There's still some, but not nearly as many as there is the minorities that have come over, the new Canadians, and especially throughout Canada in the dray industry. And anybody, whether you're a drayman or I should actually say dray person, whether you're working off the shipyards or you're working off the container yards, it doesn't matter. It's mostly minorities.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, look, I think, given my political persuasion, there's a tendency for people to say I'm just anti-immigrant, and hardly. I think that we have a real problems. I work in the trade association where we've got Albanians, we've got Hungarians, we've got the Russians and Ukrainians that all meet and break bread together. So I'm certainly not going to bash any ethnic group, but there really are mafias. It's the best way to put it. And you just got to realize that you can't damn a whole ethnic group based upon how those things are organized. But some of them are pretty tight.
Yeah, some of them. And you know what? There's all sorts of different people, and listen. We've got different groups throughout trucking history. Get into it right now. It's people from there. People from Africa, people from all over. It's unfortunate unfortunately what happens is people come here and to North America and they'll work for somebody that may take advantage of them and take advantage of their wanting to get ahead and not knowing the law. And you'll have people that run trucking companies that do take advantage of these people. It happens quite a bit. Even their own people take advantage of them. And they're really.
And another thing is, if you did tighten up training, and if you did have an altruistic attitude to it, some of these people come over and they don't understand the rules, and I think they just actually led. And something there can go, because I think it's becoming a dirty little secret that a lot of people are going offshore to get their dispatch. I mean, everybody's doing it. AT&T and Colombia and Bangladesh. You call to get your TV fixed, and the person's got an English accent and he's from wherever. So it's not just in trucking, but we've got cases that are documented where people have gone to figure out where is this mask man.
Yeah, that's going on.
Azerbaijan, this is over there. I mean, what's the world come to? It used to be that if you were going to add somebody, you asked for references, and you kept asking for references until he gave you somebody that you knew, and then you called up and said, tell me what you think about this Rico Muhammad. I've never met him, because it was all a question of getting references from somebody you trusted. And now you don't even know.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And you know what? This has been, I know about, it's got to be 15 or 20 years ago, making hotel reservations through Expedia or somebody. And I'm talking to a woman on the phone, and I said, "Where are you?" And she finally said, "I'm in Manila, Philippines." And she sounded like she could have been in Atlanta or Tennessee or Vancouver. So, so this has been going on for the last 20 years.
Well, and we're almost to eat up an hour. I guess what I'd like to do is just to run the couple of things that I'm going to be working on here in the next 30, 40 days.
That'd be great.
I would love to see in this hiatus period, us, with all of the press that's out there, somehow offer an answer that's not a gripe. And I think that the answer really is, hey, look, before we 10 times as many highway bus, so we can say we got enough to measure little people to bring back CSA, let's look at something that makes better sense. And what makes better sense is to use the desktop audit, which costs about $1,000, and use it to vet carriers so that everybody over a 2 or 3 year period would be able to answer the big question from Congress. Have you actually vetted everybody on the road? What they have proposed and what they've never done right now in terms of how many people have safety ratings. Most of the people have legacy safety ratings that they've had for 20 years. They actually only give less than 12,000 safety ratings a year, and that's to well over 500,000 carriers. That's a long shot from 100%. What they propose to do is to change the name. Now everybody looks awful because they say they're, quote, unrated. And
Right.
they would not necessarily vet anybody else, but they would do what they should have done way back when and say that they are licensed and authorized to operate.
100%.
But they're going to say they're going to say, well, they haven't been vetted. Well, what do you mean? You know, no, and why didn't you invent it? You know, the agency's not doing that. So, I mean, it doesn't really accomplish what it needs to give the little guy a fair chance and to at least say that they passed some kind of proficiency test. So, you know, if we can tie that together with safety, then we might see it done in our lifetime, guys. But otherwise, you think they're going to get artificial intelligence in here? We pointed out before that when you look at using highway bus, it's not just the law of large numbers. It's what scale you cross.
Yes.
What state you're in. I mean, you know, the people in Texas had far more equipment out of service than somebody somewhere else. You know, the violations in the eye of the beholder. What we're talking about just makes sense. Now, in the political world, that doesn't mean it's got a ghost of a chance, but it's something that, you know, with Rick Goblin, some folks, we'd love to have a test program just to show it.
Well, we need it. If we look back at, and if one of our listeners correct me later about this, my understanding way back, trucking was regulated because they realized right away during its infancy, here's an industry that's going to have a lot of gasoline, because we wouldn't have diesel then, a lot of wood, a lot of steel, a lot of manpower, and it's going to have a lot of people working there, and we got to protect it. And we also need to protect to make sure that people get their goods. They decided to protect everything with regulations. So our forefathers in both countries had the foresight to see the value of this industry. Unfortunately, today's politicians don't understand the value of this industry. And that's why we don't have this, and the bureaucrats as well.
Well, yeah, and I went through the first transition because I came in at a time when we went around the country and put on little trials, and you'd have 10 or 15 people come in to find any of the carriers. It was great fun, but they were regulating routes, rates, and services with the idea that trucking was a public utility like the railroad, and it wasn't intended to be free competition. That they really needed to take seriously whether or not Waverly, Tennessee could support 3 carriers. Yes. Well, that, you know, in a way that worked, and the reason that it worked is most small towns in the U.S. had at least one carrier that would come to the hub city and pick up whatever was going to Hohenwald that day.
Yep. Same as
And
Canada.
and what happened was in Tennessee, for example, when deregulation came around, there were a few people that hauled special commodities,
Right.
milk or something. But most of the people, the general commodity freight, you had 2 or 3 line haul carriers that would bring it in from outside the state. But then there were 40 companies in the state of Tennessee who had authority from Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, or Knoxville to the other 96 counties.
Right.
That's 40 people serving 96 counties, and you could go down. I could ride down the road from DC and cross. Who was the guy that was responsible if the load didn't get to Bodog? Well,
Right.
when deregulation happened, all those guys were union.
Right.
And what happened was then union people could not compete. They just simply could not compete. Now, we're 30 years later. You guys want to guess how many of those 40 carriers are left?
There's hardly any.
Yeah.
Hardly any. Since over time go and set up a truckload carrier. But the one that's left is an outfit called Avery.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? Avery was one of the 3 that was non-union. Yeah, look, they've done a beautiful job. You can't say anything about it. But if you go through and see what was happening back then, all of the folks that were LTL type and had the not my job line up to get loaded and unloaded, they very
Right.
quickly lost out to the truckload of folks where people wanted to get miles and get home. And it just seems to me as though we're going back. It's kind of like Back to the Future, in terms of the way that the business model will work. And one of the reasons that it's so bad in the dray industry is because the longshoremen are awful. I
They're
mean,
tough. Yeah,
yeah.
they're not to work with.
Well, we done pretty much, like I say, whenever we have you on, Hank, we pretty much blow through the hour. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of, before we kind of put a bow on this one, before we wrap up? Anything else?
There are a couple of things, Rico, that I need to get moving with, and that is if we're going to go back to Congress on the owner operator issue, on the fraud issue, or on any of these issues, particularly trying to speak for the small carrier and the owner operator, we're going to need some grassroots support. I mean, ATA and all those folks, they've got great big funding requirements. TIA, you give to their the due structure provides for a last, but then they go out and have an advocacy fund. So when they go to Washington, they take 100 people, and it's not a game that we can play. But ultimately, we're going to need to be able to mobilize owner operators that enjoy being owner operators and willing to. Sometimes you wonder. I know you got some followers, Rico, who are in social media and are bringing out some of the examples of frauds and those kinds of things. We really need to tie those people together. I mean, there are a lot of things on Google search or stuff that's not otherwise picked up, and once you get people reporting it, as Chuck knows, this is this is America's great unknown fraud. If the rest of the country is this bad, well, but Chuck, just pick out the aisle we need to go.
Well, we definitely got to try to do our best to try to raise awareness and try to maybe get it on people's radar to actually give a damn and get involved in this whole process. Because like you say, it's definitely for the owner operator, our livelihoods are primarily at stake at in this juncture right here where we are right now. And we need to be a little bit more.
We have an advanced. We have an advanced take everybody to Washington because we don't even know who's going to be there when the Congress sings. But we've now got about 45 folks, including both of you guys, on our quote steering committee. And if we can mark the numbers, of course Chuck doesn't count because he don't vote, but otherwise, Rico, I hope you know what's his name, Warnick or whoever he is, because he's your senator and he's on the Commerce Committee.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and so there are two other guys in Atlanta, and between the three of you guys would cover a large carrier, a medium-sized carrier, and a small carrier, and
I may be able to.
You got stories. You just told somebody your story.
Yeah, I may be able to pull some strings on that. Actually, I've got someone close to me that's actually a city councilman here, and I'm pretty sure that I might be able to put a bug in his ear to see if he might be able to arrange something where I can maybe get a meeting.
This buddy that I was trying to hook you up,
right,
out at the airport,
right.
He's got all the information, being expediters and small vehicles. The call boards for those folks are just rotten. I mean, the people that are running the mini models and some of those things are just deplorable. But anyway, we did that before when we had SMS, and we were fortunate then. I think there's enough people that have been burned. If they will help, we should. I can't imagine who in this industry would be against fighting fraud, unless they were
fraudsters
themselves. Yeah.
But they're outnumbering the honest guys.
Yeah, they may be able to buy somebody in New Jersey. I don't know. But we'll
right. Well, man, I tell you, Hank, we definitely appreciate you for taking the time out of your schedule here on a Sunday evening, afternoon here to come on and help us kind of pre-record this show. We want to definitely thank you again for taking the time out to do so on behalf of myself and Chuck. Really, it's always a pleasure to get you on.
And listen, if either one or both of you probably does social media a whole lot better than I do, but we need to build more following in terms of tracking the kinds of issues you're talking about. And at some point, I'd be happy to work with you so that we can post and drive people to the show. You said earlier that obviously to whatever their algorithm is, we need to measure it. And the very fact that you've got it up means that, hey, if they don't want to join us on Sunday night, we can say, I guess, what is that? The people in social media now that just point folks out. We'll get people who
I guess you're referring to the influencers or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, an
But
influencer. You guys, I think Chuck's an influencer, but we'll just hold that.
We're working at it. Rico and I are
but
working.
but yeah, before I let everybody go, I always try to, and I'm not at my office, so I don't have my book to hold up. But just a reminder, everybody, go out and if you don't have Hank's book, go over to www.transportationlaw.net. That's Hank's website. There's a ton of other information available for free over there. But if you don't have Hank's latest book, Rules of the Road, I highly recommend that you go out and order you a copy. Definitely, I call it affectionately, I call it the Bible of the trucking industry. It's definitely the you don't know what you don't know, and that book will help demystify and clarify a lot of situations and a lot of legal terms and jargon that are out here that you may or may not, more than likely may not be aware of, especially when you're signing a lot of these broker contracts and things of that nature. And nowadays, it's gotten to a point. I remember before when I first got started, we had the ability to kind of take stuff out of the contract and everything else. But now with they're talking about one of the things with the whole vetting process now with the highways and the other services, you don't have that liberty anymore. You got to take all of it or none of it. but at least if you me saying that is to say that at least you'll know what you're getting yourself involved in, or understand the terms of the contract, in the stipulations within the contract with Hank's book, because he definitely lays everything out.
In that regard, it'd be great at some point to talk to Chuck about this, because I really think that large brokers do themselves an ultimate in their contract indemnity clauses that they know the small carrier can't satisfy. At some point, I think it behooves a broker and a carrier to come out with, hey, look, this is my standard holding out. I got $100,000 in cargo insurance. If you need more and you got a bunch of freight, we'll go talk to my insurance guy. But basically, that brokers and carriers realize that 90% of the business ought to move on reasonable terms, because what happens to me is a little guy will lost, particularly if it's a big indemnity. And when they tell me, well, gee, I've gotten to where I don't look at them, I just have to sign them. That's not good business.
No, I agree. You can
Well, it's probably a subject for another day, but also I thought that I was under the impression, Hank, I understand they still have the indemnity clauses in there, but I thought that one of the big things that OIDA speaking when we was talking about them earlier was I thought that they had helped fight the battle to kind of eliminate the indemnity clauses in a lot of these contracts. But like I said, that's probably, if we start down that rabbit hole, we'll probably be on here for another hour.
Well, I mean, when you talk, OIDA has always played with the contract being the truth in leasing contract.
Right.
And, that's where they've been the watchdog against, and, I'm all for them, people who try to do what's illegal there. But with the broker carrier contract, when that first came in and you did away with the fact that the carrier published his own terms, the broker said, hot dog, now we get a chance to get even. And it's been kind of the law of the jungle. And in fact, there's one trade group that puts on a road. And I'm just saying that at some point, particularly when carriers are going to hire other carriers to their broker division as excess capacity, it's like an old joint interline. They don't need any more coverage than they're willing to accept themselves. So why put in a contract that the little guy's got to have $1 million?
Right. Well, yeah. Like I said, we get started down that too far, we'll probably be back on here for another hour. So Hank, I don't want to belabor the point. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Hank.
I've enjoyed it, and I'll be talking to you guys.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. And good luck with your conference this week. Break a leg when you're up there, bud, as they say in showbiz.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it, Hank. Chuck, want to let the folks know how they can get a hold of you, and we'll wrap this thing up.
Yes, sir. If anybody needs me for anything, please reach out to me, Chuck Snow 280@outlook.com. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys for taking the time out to join us. You could have spent some time doing anything else in the world, but you took a little time to hang out with us. We're always eternally grateful for you doing so. With that being said, we want you guys to stay safe out there, stay healthy, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at your same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch on the flip flop. God bless.